From the male perspective, many times it seems like women don't have clear or well-defined preferences. However, if we look at it from the female point of view, they think exactly the same about us. And in reality, they're right, because if you stop to analyze it, you'll realize that throughout your life, you've probably been attracted to women with very different characteristics. Maybe at some point you liked a blonde girl, but also a brunette, or even a redhead. You may have been attracted to a tall woman, but also to another who was shorter. And this has a fairly simple explanation. Attraction is not based solely on physical appearance. Many times we focus too much on a person's external features and forget that there are other factors at play. This is a detail we often overlook, and it's what I want to address in this video. I'm going to explain the difference between what is known as male preference and female preference, based on various studies and surveys. My goal is that by the end of this video, you'll have a better idea of how different they really are and how they work in practice. But before going into detail, there's something very important to clarify. What women say they like in a man and what they actually choose in real life are two things that often don't completely match. This doesn't mean they're lying, but rather that female attraction is largely influenced by emotional factors, while men tend to be more visual and prioritize appearance at first glance. Women are much more guided by how people make them feel during interactions. Now, this doesn't mean that physical appearance has no importance to them. Saying something like that would be completely false, but it's true that in some cases, looks don't play as decisive a role as they do for men. In fact, there are situations where women may feel attracted to someone who doesn't meet traditional beauty standards, simply because that person generates certain positive emotions in them. Think of it this way. If a man manages to get along well with a woman and connect with her on a deeper level, many times she may overlook certain physical details that, in theory, could have been seen as disadvantages. This is something that doesn't happen as frequently with men. And this is where a very common mistake comes into play, one that many men make when trying to attract a woman. The problem is that they tend to do it from a completely male perspective, based on what they themselves find attractive in other men, instead of understanding how attraction works from the female point of view. If we analyze what a man finds attractive in another man, the pattern tends to repeat quite a bit. In general, men tend to admire a muscular physique, preferably large, with an imposing appearance that borders on the unreal. It's no coincidence that in movies, special effects or CGI are often used to exaggerate the musculature of actors, because achieving that level of perfection in real life is practically impossible without digital help. For this reason, many men think that the key to being attractive lies in developing a large amount of muscle mass, even sacrificing definition in the process. Then, on top of that base, they might add other elements they consider attractive from their own perspective. A good beard, tall height, voluminous hair, a prominent jawline. In other words, everything typically associated with the alpha male stereotype or the classic superhero character. But here's where we find the big difference with female preference. Attraction for women is not based solely on physical appearance, but on the stories and emotions a person conveys. To prove this, it's enough to go out into the street and observe the couples around us. Very rarely will you see a woman walking hand in hand with a man who has the physique of a magazine model or a professional bodybuilder. In most cases, they're partners. They are men with normal physical characteristics. Another fact that reinforces this is that women are the main consumers of romance novels and love-related content. This gives us a clue about what they're really looking for. More than a perfect physique, they're interested in an emotional connection and a story that draws them in. On the other hand, as I already mentioned, men tend to be much more visual. This makes our standards of beauty and attraction much more tied to a person's physical traits. That's why the men who spark interest in women aren't necessarily the most handsome or muscular, but those who project an interesting story through their personality, attitude, and lifestyle. A man who gives off a sense of mystery, who seems approachable but at the same time a little unpredictable, who shows self-confidence and gives the impression of living an exciting life, has a huge advantage in the field of attraction. And in many cases, he doesn't even need to be physically attractive to get a woman's attention. In fact, many relationships begin simply because a man had the initiative to approach a woman, talk to her, and make a good impression. That is, it's not necessarily the most handsome guy who ends up with the girl, but the one who dares to take the first step and manages to create a connection with her. For this reason, a man who puts all his effort into improving his physical appearance, but doesn't work on his attitude, communication, and the way he relates to others may struggle to attract women. No matter how muscular or handsome he is, if he gives off negative energy, an air of superiority, or simply comes across as unapproachable, he will hardly generate interest. Interestingly, with men, something completely different happens. In my personal experience, I've noticed that when I'm with friends and a woman walks into a place clearly projecting an "I'm unattainable" attitude, they still find her attractive anyway. It doesn't bother them that she seems unapproachable or has an annoyed expression. As long as she's physically attractive, that's enough to capture their interest. With women, it's different. What truly attracts them is the story a man tells through his image, his attitude, and his behavior. This explains why certain types of men are more attractive to some women and not to others. For example, the classic bad boy conveys rebellion, adventure, and in many cases, a certain disinterest. It's a profile that many women find irresistible. But there's also the case of the soft boy, or the guy with a more modern style who paints his nails, wears trendy clothes, and has a more polished image. Despite being completely opposite to the rugged guy stereotype, he also has his audience of women who find him attractive. And don't forget something fundamental. Your personality is just as important, or even a bit more, than your physical appearance when it comes to being truly attractive to a woman. Sometimes we become obsessed with the idea that only outward appearance matters, when in reality, what truly makes a difference is how you present yourself to the world and the energy you give off. For example, a sense of humor is a trait that almost all women find attractive in a man. However, it's not just about cracking jokes for the sake of it. What matters is that your sense of humor aligns with hers, that there's a genuine connection through laughter. Not all women have the same kind of humor. Some prefer sarcasm, others enjoy a more lighthearted style, and some are drawn to intellectual humor. The key is finding that common ground, because when a woman laughs with you, she's building an emotional connection that goes beyond the physical. But humor isn't the only important trait. There are other qualities that can make you stand out: generosity, empathy, and respect for others. Often, a genuine act of kindness can surprise and attract much more than an imposing appearance. Women value men who show emotional intelligence, who know how to listen, and who approach life with maturity. However, it's important to understand that being generous and empathetic doesn't mean being overly compliant or constantly making sacrifices just to please others. This is where a crucial concept comes in: boundaries. Being kind and considerate doesn't mean being always available or letting others take advantage of you. If you don't set clear boundaries, you may come across as weak or easily manipulated, and that can actually reduce your appeal. The key is finding a balance. Show your generous and compassionate side, but without neglecting yourself. Don't do favors expecting something in return, and don't constantly seek others' approval. Many women already receive plenty of attention throughout the day, so rather than chasing them and boosting their ego, it's better to maintain a certain degree of mystery. Remember that you also have a life, goals, and important activities. Don't become someone who's available 24/7 just to please another person. When a woman sees that you have your own priorities and that your world doesn't revolve around her, she sees you as someone with higher value and independence. And of course, we can't ignore a topic that always sparks debate: money. It's undeniable that money and status influence attraction. But more than the money itself, what really matters is what it represents: stability, security, and the ability to provide a good quality of life. It's completely natural for a woman to feel attracted to a man who shows he can take care of himself and his future. But if money were the only factor in attraction, only the richest men would have partners. And we know that's not the case. What truly makes the difference is your attitude and mindset toward life. Instead of obsessing over how much money you have today, focus on building your own path, working toward your goals, and earning respect through your actions. It's not about grand gestures, but simple things like keeping your promises, standing by your word, and showing that you're someone who can be trusted. Self-confidence is one of the most attractive qualities you can develop. It shows in everything: the way you speak, the way you walk, and the way you relate to others. Something as simple as walking with your head held high is a reflection of your self-esteem. You have no reason to hide or feel less than anyone else. Work on your self-confidence, on how you express yourself, and on how you present yourself to the world. If you don't take yourself seriously, no one else will. And that brings us to another important point: the way you dress and take care of yourself. You don't need to follow every trend or completely change your style, but it's essential that your image reflects your personality. Dress with intention, with your own style, one that makes you feel good about yourself. The clothes you wear don't just speak about your taste. They also reveal how much you care for yourself and the image you project. A sloppy appearance can lower your perceived value without you even realizing it. On the other hand, a defined style can make you stand out without saying a single word. In conclusion, male and female preferences may differ in many ways, but what really matters is that you work on yourself. The key is not to change to fit someone else's preferences, but to constantly improve in order to become the best version of yourself. If you focus on your personal growth, your goals, on building your confidence, and on taking care of both your appearance and your attitude, you'll naturally attract the right people, without having to force anything. And I'll leave you with a question worth reflecting on. If you had the ability to know exactly what a woman finds attractive in a man, would you really spend your entire life trying to fit that ideal just to get her attention? Wouldn't it be better to use that time, effort, and energy to build the life you truly want for yourself? Think about it. In the end, the decision is always yours. Thank you for watching this video, guys. This topic is worth exploring, because many times we fall into the false idea that all women are looking for the same thing, when in reality, attraction is much more complex and personal. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like, share it with your friends, and leave a comment. Your interactions help a lot to keep creating more content for you. And if there's a topic you'd like us to talk about in a future video, feel free to suggest it down in the comments. See you in the next video.